All right, I got the timer started. Hey, everybody, welcome to Laravel News live from Laracon, day one. I'm Jake Bennett. With me, as always, is my good buddy, Mr. Michael
I
Dorinda.
made it. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to have you over here. We discovered just a couple minutes ago, this is actually our very first time recording
Face to
Laravel
face.
News face-to-face
Yeah.
ever. Actually, I think it's our first time recording any podcast
I
face-to-face
thought
ever.
we did one in New York. We did
Okay.
North meet South.
Okay.
But yeah.
So after 7 years of doing Laravel News, we are doing it in person
Yeah,
for the very
first
first
time.
time. Yeah. So we are here at Laracon in the green room during lunchtime, bringing to you the news of the morning. So let's talk about the venue real quick. Huge venue this
It is
year.
massive. It is so big, and there are so many people here, and yet it doesn't feel like it's full. But this is the biggest Laracon ever.
Agreed. Yeah, there's plenty of space to spread out.
Yeah.
Even, there have been previous Laracons where the chairs were literally right up next
Yeah.
to each other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space. People have room to spread out. It feels great. The other thing that's interesting is the vendors are actually in another hall.
Yeah.
Now, they have done a good job of sort of incentivizing people
Sure.
to get over
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in previous years the T-shirt was just in the bag, and there was like different pieces that were just included in the attendee bag. This year, people need to actually go and see and get their punch cards done, need to get your stamp cards done. So if you are here, make sure that you go and do that.
Yeah.
So that you can pick up your T-shirt. We've got the Laravel Lambos as well, the toy Lambos. We have to be careful to say toy Lambo.
That's right.
They're not giving away real ones, not this year at least.
Not this
so.
year. Yeah, maybe future years. But they actually did a good job funneling everybody over to that crowd this morning. Everybody kind of started their day over at the vendor booths. And I got to say, too, the swag is really on point this year.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff over there.
Yeah.
And some first-time vendors, actually. Some that I've not seen here before. So definitely get a chance, go over there and see those folks. Well, kicking off the day, we had Aaron Francis. Did a great job. Inspirational talk, as always. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think, this is something I do at Laracon AU. I think kicking off and setting the tone for the event, this is what we're expecting, this is what we're here to do, this is, and really kind of setting the scene for what these 2 days are all about, what bringing the community together is all about, and then, capping it off that you can just do things, we're here to ship, we're here to,
We're a community of builders.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think that's a really important thing to be able to do, to really set the tone, and it really gets the whole community aligned in terms of why we come together for these events.
I thought it was awesome, too, that he said, all right, how many people of you out there, this is not your first Laracon.
Yeah.
So you had a big chunk of people who are, longtime attenders, they've been here for a while.
Yeah.
And then he did the same question for how many of you are first timers. It was
many.
over half the crowd.
So many people.
It was incredible.
There's two ways of thinking about it. I think that the way that I like to think about it, and I've spoken to Taylor about this in the past as well, is that seeing so many first timers coming to the events means that the community is still thriving, it's still growing.
Yes.
There are still people coming in to Laravel as a community and coming to these events. And so it's really cool to turn around, you and I sitting up the front, turn around and see all of those hands go up for people here for the first time.
Absolutely. And those people are a little way down the funnel too, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're just installing the framework and using it.
Yeah.
They are literally committing to come to Laracon. They're paying for flights, they're paying for hotels, they're paying for the conference.
Yeah.
They want to be here. They want to be a
here.
part of the community. So that was really cool. Great kickoff there. We then had Nuno Maduro, who released Pest 4.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown. Now, as a large user of Dusk tests, you've actually worked in some of our stuff.
Yeah.
We have Dusk tests all over the place,
Yeah.
especially for some of our external facing sites, so it's really critical that they continue to work. This was such a breath of fresh air. We've been looking to see what we can replace our Dusk tests with, and we were looking at Jeffrey Way's Cypress course that he had on Laracast.
Yeah.
Playwright is like the new player on the scene, and Nuno has packaged Playwright up with Pest, which is the testing framework that we all know and love from the last couple of years. What did you think?
I think, and he said it in his talk, when he did V1, he thought that was it. There was no more. And then he did V2 and V3, and he keeps on coming up with new things. And he had been playing around with Playwright for months. He'd mentioned this, and just to see it all come together and for it to work as seamlessly as it does, for it to just be as though you're writing Pest tests, and for it to be as quick as it is, because it leverages all the parallel testing functionality that we know.
Yeah.
So, where you have a test that could take 10, 15, 20 seconds to run, running it in parallel gives you the ability to reduce that based on however many cores you've got. And then the work that he's done with matrix sharding for CI, because CI has always been, if you're using GitHub Actions, it's always that little bit slow. It's
Quite a bit slower.
It's quite a bit slower. Which may or may not be a funnel to like pay for faster workers and things like that. The fact that he and the team have put work in to make that as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Keeps costs down, gets time to ship down, all of that kind of stuff is just mind blowing.
Right. So not only like vertical scaling, whereas like you can only get so many processors with GitHub runners, right? You actually have to go outside of GitHub to kind of get runners with more processors, or you can do the horizontal scaling, which is their aspect here, right? Which is where you just split the tests up and run it across multiple workers, and then he will do the process of taking care of keeping track of which tests are running in which spot, and it's seamless. You literally just dash shard equals 4, similar to how you just do dash parallel. Here's how many processes I want running on it. Pretty incredible. Some of the big things for me that I was super excited about is the ability to leverage a lot of the things that we can do in other unit tests that we're familiar with, like notification fake, queue fake, mail fake, being able to write to the database, authenticate as user without having to go through a whole login flow. That is a massive undertaking that we always had to just manually, right?
It was always a step through of like, okay, you've got to go to the login form and you've got to fill in the email and the password and then make sure that you're logged in and then write the test that you want. And you're doing this for the fact that you can, as you say, authenticate as user and then just write the test. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. The other two things I thought were really cool that really take this from being just a thing that you use for tests and changes to be something that you use to write your code. You know, browser tests weren't really anything. They were always something you kind of did after the fact. If you're doing TDD style, you can use unit style tests to kind of drive that stuff out, but you don't really have that end-to-end testing. This is, number one, it's fast enough that we can do that down. And number two, you have these two of the things that he mentioned, which are really neat, which is you can have it open the browser to the spot where it failed, which was difficult to do before. It could maybe do screenshots, but it can actually navigate you to the input where the error occurred. Which is really cool. And then he also has that, it's essentially like a debugger. You can do a tinker directly inside.
Straight in. So you can, kind of like if you were using an Xdebug or something like that, it drops you into the execution flow and pauses it effectively, allowing you to then tinker with, who is the current user, where is the state of the database, all of this kind of stuff that is just available to you.
Yeah. So it's really great for that. And then he talked about smoke testing, which smoke testing is basically just give me all the routes, let me run through all of them. And he, really quickly here, because we're 7 minutes in, we got 3 more talks to talk about. Like some of the, check to make sure there's no JavaScript console errors, check to make sure there's no console log statements left behind, right? All of that stuff.
Yeah, all of that kind of stuff is just the things that I know that we have left DDs in, left logs in, things like that, for having those smoke tests and to then capture end to end, not just like back end code that you've left there, but also front end code is going to really elevate the coverage and how effective those tests are.
Yeah. In addition, the test coverage stuff, so it does integrate, right? So you can now get test coverage from these PHP style browser tests, which is amazing. The last piece he talked about was that visual regression testing, right? Which was also a really, really big deal. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, to be able to see, for example, you take a screenshot and the really contrived but really obvious example was going from light mode to dark mode. Or going, having this screenshot that you took on the desktop and then this other feature that is available to say, I'm using an iPhone 15 and then being flagged that, yes, this has changed. So you can go and eyeball it and it gives you like this pane that you can slide left to right to see exactly what the before and after were. So a lot of things like that might slip through the cracks, that might not get discovered until it's in production or a user flags it. Now it's gonna hold up your CI process and tell you, hey, you've missed this thing. You need to go back and deal with it. Either to update the snapshot to say, no, this is the current state of what we're expecting, or to go, I have changed something I didn't intend to, and then to fix it. So,
and the cool thing with that too is that used to be something that was really only available as there was a lot of SaaS offerings for that, right? Like you'd have to ship to production, but then once it was in production, it would scan your site and then tell you, and it's like, well, the bug's already out there now, right? So, really, really great stuff. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about TJ Miller Prism. So, good friend of the show, right? TJ, we love TJ. We've been able to see some previews of this talk, but he absolutely crushed it.
He did.
It was incredible. What were your favorite parts?
I mean, as you say, we'd seen him iterating on it over the past 2 months or so as he's crafted the talk, and he's really honed in on all of the power that the Prism library affords developers to switch providers, to use streaming output, to use text output, to use like schemas and things like that. I think he's really hit at a very high level all of the things that the library can do.
Yeah.
And kind of jumping forward a little bit, where Mary in her talk talked about your talk from 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a 30-minute talk that she spent 2 hours going back to. That, people still talk about those kinds of talks that give you just a taste of everything that's possible that you can refer back to, and then, extend that knowledge to look at, okay, I want to look at this specific piece of functionality. I want to look at this specific behavior, and then going from there. So I think he did a really good job of encapsulating everything.
Yeah.
And then, leaving it up to people to then speak to him, or to go and do the research, or check out the library. So really, really well put together talk.
Yeah, like, here are all the things you can do.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like, here's the specific way to do it. It wasn't a tutorial.
Yeah.
It was more like, it was a presentation, right?
Yeah.
It was like a demo more than a tutorial, right? Here are the things you can do. But in his slides, he did go through, and he had code for all of it, right? So he did show the syntax. The syntax looks so nice. All of these things fit on a single slide, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it was really cool to see. One of my favorite things is that he uses Blade to do the prompting of the engine, which is really neat because it's a tool we're all familiar with. So if I want to provide the LLM context to say, here are the posts that I'm looking to summarize, I can use Blade to interact with the database, loop through them, pull them all out, and then provide that as a prompt. So really powerful, great usage of the framework to do something we're all familiar with, to pull it, even include statements for like his personas. Like that was a great callback too. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, Taylor saying, as part of Forge and building out all of their infrastructure and all of their backend stuff, they would use Blade as the templating language for Bash scripts, for things like that. So it's a really just outside of the box way of thinking about how can I use the tools that Laravel provides us to make developer experience, to make interacting with these things a lot better than, trying to put a here doc inside of your code. It's like, no, this kind of thing belongs inside of a text file. We can fill it with dynamic content, because that's what PHP is, a templating language, and this is what we're doing. We're templating those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, so really, really great. Walked away with a lot of things I want to go home and try. I told TJ just before his talk, I was like, I've been trying to not bother you because I know you're working on a talk, but I have so many questions about things. I was like, but I want to make sure you get this through. Like, let's just, hammer this out, and then let's talk afterwards. So I'm really excited to get home and try some of these things. Mary Perry, first talk
timer
on the Laracon stage.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushed it. Most technical talk of the morning, without a doubt. Right? Yeah,
it's an undertaking to take all of those concepts, and as she mentioned at the end of her talk, these are all things that we kind of fall upon or happen upon in writing code. Action pattern is a big popular one at the moment. The command pattern. We all kind of instinctively move towards these things in our code, I think. And that's because a lot of this stuff exists in the framework and in the applications that people are publishing in the community. We see this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we may not necessarily know what these things are named, but we do them. And so having a talk that kind of really quickly, like Whiplash, goes through them all. Again, another one of those reference talks. You'll come back to it and you go, okay, let's look at this one thing, and we'll understand that. But having it in the context of the framework and how Laravel uses these things, and I think Mary did a fantastic job of getting all of that across in a way that we'll be able to be, come back to for months and years to come.
Agreed. And I think she did a really good job too, just establishing the reason for why we even have design patterns, right? Like, it's a common language that we're all speaking. So it's like a shortcut to say, like, I want to use this solution, this previous solution has worked well to solve a lot of other similar problems. Let's use this pattern, right? And it was cool because she didn't advocate to say, like, everybody needs to go read the Gang of Four book. And she said, like, learn them or don't. Learn their names or don't. But, like, know that, like, by learning the name, you're giving yourself a bit of a superpower, right? A shortcut to be able to communicate with your team. And so did a really great job. I mean, the request lifecycle going from the top of the stack all the way through to the response and all the different patterns that are used. Tons of source diving there. Really, really good stuff. Let's move on to Terry real quick. We're going to try and keep this under 15. So we've got Terry, who talked about reinventing the wheel. Slides were amazing, actually. He's an incredible designer in addition to being a wildly smart and intelligent developer. Blew me away. Like, he said he developed his own protocol to solve this problem that he ran into. Tell me a little bit, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just on the design thing, and like I've only come to know Terry because he was speaking at Laracon, and I've been following him on social media and things like that, and he presented it today on stage that he likes to learn, and that's how he gets better. We learn to get better at things. He talks about him, learning to play guitar. Now he's really good at guitar. So this comes across, he's a great designer. He would have learned to do that, over a long period of time to dive into and then create your own protocol to solve a problem while building out what, some might think is outlandish. How am I going to do distributed, server-based, like hosted SQLite?
Yeah.
And to not be taken aback or stopped from doing that just because there are other solutions in the market. Like still going about it and doing it. And he presented it really well. He's a good orator. He spoke well on stage. Absolutely. He told a great story, and I hope to see more of Terry in years to come.
For sure. The first half of the talk was more philosophical,
yes.
right? It was like, used Aaron's talk as motivation to say, like, it's okay to reinvent the wheel, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't always have to start something from scratch. Referenced a couple people in the community who have done so, right?
Yeah.
Nuno with Pest,
yeah.
Caleb with Livewire, right? Adam with Tailwind, right?
Yeah.
These are all things that had existing solutions that said, no, I think I can do this better.
Yeah.
I'm going to reinvent that wheel, and
mm-hmm.
now we all get to benefit from that. So that was really cool. He also talked about when he was learning jazz music, right? That he had to take a solo, transcribe it to sheet music,
mm-hmm.
and then from there had to play from the music, right? And what he said is his teacher said, can you sing this in your voice, right? And so he was like, this idea of like internalizing the thing, right? And then eventually, once you've been able to mimic and master, he used this word, taking it to the shed a lot of times, once you've been able to master the technique of what somebody else is doing, then you can sort of put your own spin on things. So that mm-hmm. was really cool because a lot of times that's the feel that people have. It's like, I should be able to figure this out on my own. It's like you can learn a lot faster if you take existing work, look at it, use it as inspiration, and then make some changes to it.
Yeah, and I think us as developers will go through that in our own process. You might write a first version of something, get it working, make it ugly, make it work. All right, now let's refactor.
Yeah.
Or scrap it all and start again, because the second time you write it is going to be much better.
Absolutely.
Because you've already learned, where you're going. The discovery part of that process is finished. Right, let's do it again. And so leaning on other people and seeing what has already been done gets you to that point a lot quicker.
Yeah. And so at the end of the talk, Aaron said, like, well, how do I evaluate an idea, right, to know whether it's something worth spending my time on? And he said, even if it doesn't see the light of day, right? I'm trying to use he said, like, the value is now embedded. Like, I now have it. I carry it as part of me, right? That learning. So, like, even if it's not like a SaaS that makes $1 million, right? Like, you went on the journey and you learned the thing, right? You're going to be a better person, better developer because of that, which I thought was cool.
And in our community, even just communicating that to the world, even if the product or the SaaS or whatever doesn't work out, people will see what you're doing, and that can lead to opportunities in the future for you, whether it's commercially, whether it's work, whether it's partnership, whatever it is, just being out there and just doing things, as Aaron likes to say.
Yes, for sure.
The journey a lot of the time can be more rewarding longer term than ultimately whatever you are working on specifically.
I'll share a quick story and then we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
Was at a Ben Rector concert on this last Saturday, right? And the guy who was on stage with him playing saxophone, he told the story of how this all came to be. This guy was like, oh, this song needs a saxophone. So he played a saxophone, recorded it on Instagram, sent it to his DMs, right? Ben Rector's DM, the guy who was the headlining artist. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, thanks. And then like 3 years later, he was like, this song needs a saxophone. He's like, I know the guy, right? And so he messaged me, hey, you want to come on tour with me? He's like, absolutely, right? So like publishing your work increases your luck, right? Is the idea, right? And so I love that. Another just good one of those, like, light a fire under people, get them out there, get them working on stuff. Lightbase.com is the name of the products he's releasing. Looks really, really cool. Definitely go start on GitHub. That's what he said was the best thing you could do to kind of help him. Folks, we're at 18 minutes, so a little bit over, but we're going to go grab some lunch. Half the day one is done. We're going to try and do this a couple more times during Laracon. It's been super good to have you here, dude. I'm stoked. Like yesterday, you had like a 24-hour day. You had a 44-hour long Monday.
Yeah, 44 hours of Monday. By the time I got to bed. But it's so good to be back here. I haven't been for 6 years, but anyone who wants to question why you would come to a conference, it's to meet the people that you've been speaking with online. It's to see your friends, to make new friends, to reunite and hang out. The hallway track is never to be I don't know what the word is. It never disappoints. It never disappoints.
Yes.
It's the energy that you get from all of the people, just the smiles. The community itself is incredible and warming and welcoming, and doesn't matter who you are or where you're from or what you're working on. It's just energizing to be here, in spite of having to travel for 30 hours to get here. Like I still had energy. I was still going at 11 o'clock last night.
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you in a couple hours probably.
Hey,
Take it easy.
yeah.
Bye.